In many, many cases, we do actually start with an idea that comes out of our own experience and intuition. And in many, many cases, we change that idea in a way that becomes unrecognizable and unmarketable. I'll give you an example. So, favorite example of mine. This guy that I was talking to on Twitter was kind of like a hobbyist day trader, trade stocks and bonds and whatever. And he would use a bunch of websites to make decisions on what he should trade. He would go in there and look if something changed. There were some statistics, some values, and he would make a decision if he needed to change something in his trading approach for the day. Most of the time, the data didn't change. So most of the time he would look, oh, it's still the same. I don't need to change it. Sometimes the data would change and he would need to change something. And he thought, and he's a software engineer, obviously. So he thought, I should automate this. The data changes on the website. I should get a notification. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to go look. And then he kept thinking about this idea. It's like, well, why don't I build something that can notify me of changes on all kinds of websites, not just these specific financial websites? And he kept expanding on this idea as like, wait a second, what if I could just extract data from the website into JSON, and then anybody could build anything based on data in any kind of website? By the time he got to this idea, the distance from his original idea was pretty significant. And whereas his original idea was worth actual money, like it actually, for traders, the ability to act quickly on changing data for traders is worth actual money. There's money involved in it. Versus this can turn a website into a piece of JSON. That might be worth money for some developers. In some cases, it's a lot less clear what this is for, who this is for, why someone would need to pay for that. I call this phenomenon toxic abstraction. In software, the most abstract code, the most generic code is the best code. We don't like when code does something very, very specific. We call it hard-coded. Hard-coded is bad. But hard-coded is great at marketing. Because in marketing and in sales, if you talk about a person's specific, very narrow problem in the terms that they use to describe that problem, then you can relate to them. So in a sense, in that example, it's easier to sell a delta tracking service for a particular website with financial data, just one, to a group of traders who actually need that data, than it is to sell a generic JSON analyzer thing to developers who, like we said, don't like to buy things in the first place. So from that, STEM is a very interesting way to find a niche. If you have an idea for an app, you need to go back to the specific circumstances in which this idea arose. What were you doing? Where were you working? Who were you talking to? What problem specifically? What was the narrow problem you specifically encountered yourself? Did you have any money at the time to buy a solution? Would you pay for a solution? Was it an urge to solve the problem or an urge to build something, like you mentioned, that latched on to something you noticed? What kind of situation was that? That's the origin story of your idea. And within that origin story hides the original relevant niche. Because the original relevant niche is people exactly like you having the exact same problem, but with slight differences. They have money. They either don't have the tech skills or the desire to build it themselves, and therefore they would be looking for something that already exists to solve that problem. So in order for us not to just, wave our hands, I want to take, let's say, 10 minutes. I would like to ask you guys to open up whatever note-taking app you have and write out your origin story. Could be the idea you're actually working on, and could even be a past idea that you tried to work on that didn't work out. the process itself is important. If you have an idea that you're working on right now, that is the right idea to work on. I will turn off my camera and I will be back in 10 minutes. Who would like to share an origin story? We're not going to hear all of them, just maybe one or two, because I want to use it as an example.
So for my product, what I'm building on the site is basically a way for you to send personalized messages. So my origin story is back in November during Diwali. It's a festival here in India. So I wanted to send personalized greeting messages to all my vendors and customers and people like that. So I didn't find a way to add their name. I just wanted to add their name and then wish them Diwali. So I didn't find a solution for that. And then that's my origin story. So I wanted to build something for that use case.
So a proper origin story will have a little more depth. Let me ask you a few questions here. First of all, was it for personal use or business use?
Business use. So technically why I'm sending greetings is to build a relationship, right? So it's a business use.
Okay. See? Different use case. The use case of sending greetings for Diwali is one thing. Using Diwali as an excuse to build a relationship for a business is a very, very different use case. The first does not have monetary value. The second does. So relationship building, this is real. Okay. That's first. Is the business making money? Not the business of sending greetings, the business for which you were sending the greetings. Does it have paying customers? Is it making money?
Yeah.
It does make money. What is your position within that business? Why were you tasked with sending the Diwali greetings?
So I know most of the vendors. Vendors are usually, so I'm not sending a message to an employee. I'm usually sending it to a business owner or someone closer to the owner. Or so me being one of the owners, so it makes sense for me to send it.
And you are, so within the business, so you're sending to customers or to vendors, to suppliers?
Both suppliers and customers. So
both suppliers and customers. Okay, perfect. And why was it your job?
Not technically my job. Everyone does it.
So you were sending to the ones you were in a relationship with?
Yeah. Who I wanted to keep a relationship with.
With the vendors you were talking to.
Exactly, yeah.
And the clients. So there are multiple people like you that have different groups of, look how much context there is. I'm talking to everybody. Look how much context there is in this simple situation. Within the company, there are multiple people, each of them responsible for a group of vendors and a group of clients. Within the context of this being in India, a certain time of year, you want to send greetings for Diwali. And the reason is you want to maintain or build up relationships with these people. And you're using WhatsApp to do that because in India, that is the most common communication platform, right? And it is a business that is making money, and this is a potentially valuable money related activity, because it builds a relationship with people you're in business with.
So I did think on that. So would I pay for a product like that? It's a hard sell, because again, for an Indian to buy a software, it's something hard to convince the business to do that. So would I pay for it? Probably not.
Would you pay for a service?
Would I pay for a product which would do this?
Not a product. Would you pay for someone to do it for you so you don't need to do it?
So right now I was sending I did pay someone to design the poster or the invite or the wishes. So I did pay someone to do that, but then I was sending that to everyone.
How many messages did you need to send?
Around 40.
40. So you were comfortable paying for the design of the thing. So notice an adjacent problem that you were willing and actually did pay for it. So within the context of sending Diwali greetings, the sending for 40 like people, you were willing to do the manual work yourself, but you did pay for the design. Let me ask you this. If you had 400 WhatsApp messages to send, would you have sent them manually as well?
No.
10x.
I would have someone to do it for me.
You would hire someone to do that for you, right? So at that point, it becomes a valuable. So you have boundaries here, like within your specific circumstances, there are boundaries. If you'd had more customers and more suppliers, maybe like over 100, that would have been worthwhile to, at the very least, pay someone to do that manually, or maybe pay for software that would do that. The design was something that you couldn't do yourself, so you paid somebody to do that. So that there's another piece of value here. So as an hypothesis for a problem and a solution, we could state something like this, just based on the story of your own original problem. In a business in India in November, which is large enough to not send these messages manually, but there is a desire to have to build up a relationship at this time of year with suppliers and customers. Within that company, there might be multiple people. Each of them would need to do that, and it also somehow needs to take care of the design. And within that context, this might be worth money. It's an hypothesis. We don't know. But just based on your story, this entire thing might be worth money. Lots of questions here. Is this a SaaS? Is this a one-off? Is this relevant only in India? Does this happen in a similar way on Christmas in Western countries that might pay more? Does it need to be completely automated on every holiday? Like, what other things happen around that? But that is a very significant way to see that. Do you see, CJ, the difference between this and automating sending templated messages on WhatsApp? Right? Automating sending templated messages on WhatsApp means whoever is reading your landing page or whoever you explain it to need to make all these leaps to figure out how it relates to what they actually need to do. It seems like you're making it broader, approaching a much bigger audience, so many more use cases. And you're right, it's the same tech. It's templates. There's nothing mind-shattering about that. But the difference between a general tool that can send templated messages may or may not be worth $5 or $10 a month for somebody with high churn, because you kind of only need that occasionally, and something that is specifically built to maintain relationships with providers and customers in a certain type of business. We didn't even talk about the kind of business you're in. You're in some kind of e-commerce?
Wholesale.
Wholesale. Even better. It is possible that in that kind of business, relationship building is more important than in other kinds of business. So that is even kind of tighter niche. And it's not like there's just 2 wholesale businesses in the world, right? Like, it's a fairly large niche, even just in India. And that's an important thing to know about niches in general. You can slice them and dice them and reduce them and narrow them, and you're still left with thousands and thousands and thousands of people and businesses. It is nearly impossible to find a niche that is too small. You can find a niche that is hard to reach out to, but a niche that is actually practically too small to sustain a solo business, that is very rare. When we're looking at a global audience, it is almost impossible to find a niche that is too small.